Alright, today we're going to talk about mixtures and solution, which covers section A5 in your textbook. So, here are the questions. We are relating to the Fishkill and the Snake River. How can you decide if a water sample is clean, and how can substances be separated and identified? Today you'll be able to define mixtures, and there's two types of mixtures, heterogeneous mixtures and homogeneous mixtures. Within the heterogeneous mixtures, there's suspensions and colloids. And to determine whether or not it's a colloid or suspension, we use the Tyndall effect. And homogeneous mixtures are also called solutions, which are made up of solvents and solutes. Some basic definitions. So substances is a single kind of matter that is pure and has a specific set of properties. However, a mixture is when two or more substances combine yet retain their individual properties. A homogeneous mixture is a type of mixture in which a pure substance are evenly distributed throughout the mixture. A heterogeneous mixture, however, is a mixture in which pure substances are unevenly distributed throughout the mixture, often resulting in a layering effect. So here are some examples of heterogeneous or homogeneous mixtures. As you can see here, some of them are pretty hard to determine. This you probably would think, well, that's a heterogeneous mixture because it's not evenly distributed. This would be probably a homogeneous mixture. However, it's really a heterogeneous mixture. So let's go ahead and take a look here at what we're talking about. Heterogeneous mixtures can be separated into two different types. A suspension, which is a heterogeneous mixture in which particles can be seen and easily separated by settling or filtration. A colloid, however, kind of looks like a solution. A colloid is a mixture made up of a liquid and particles that, because of their large size, remain suspended rather than dissolved in that liquid. In order to determine whether or not it's a suspension or a colloid, we use the Tyndall effect. And the Tyndall effect, we use light to pass through the solution, and if it scatters, then that means it's a colloid. If it passes right through, that means it's a suspension. Here's a little video clip that kind of goes over that.
Small enough to remain suspended and not settle out.
An example of colloid would be mixing mayonnaise and water. For colloids, light is very hard to pass through.
See, you can't see the light. Alright, thank you for joining us. And this has been Science with Will Nye the Science Guy.
Alright, so as you can see in that little demonstration, light does not pass through. That means it's a colloid. But if it passed through, that means it's a suspension. Homogeneous mixtures are also called solutions, where you are mixing two or more substances. The two substances that you are mixing, one is called the solute, which is a substance that is dissolved in solution, and the solvent, which is usually a liquid substance capable of dissolving other substances. Here are some examples. Up at the top here, we have some powdered, probably Tang, and we're mixing it with water. Well, which one is the solute, and which one's the solvent, and which one's the solution? Well, remember, when we dissolve, that substance that dissolves is called the solute. So this orange powder is being dissolved in the water. So this is the solute, the water is the solvent. Here is the solution. Water in most cases is going to be a solvent. See if you can figure out, in this case, what is the solute and the solvent in this coffee and sugar. Well, since the sugar is being dissolved, that is the solute. The coffee is dissolving the sugar, and therefore that's the solvent. And the coffee plus sugar mixed is called our solution. Here's a chart that kind of figures out the flow of how to distinguish the types of matter. So up at the top here we have matter, and matter is made up of substances or mixtures. A substance, remember, are homogeneous. Chemical formula can be written from its components, and therefore we have two types of substances, either elements or compounds. Okay, so any formula that we've talked about or any chemical that we've talked about, those are substances made up of elements, and put together they're made up of compounds. Mixtures, however, can be physically separated into varying ratios. These have their own specific set of ratios. For example, water has 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. Sodium chloride has 1 sodium, 1 chloride ion. But mixtures have a variety of different ratios. You can make a really, really highly concentrated sugar water solution, or you could add just a few grains of sugar and it would still be sugar water, but just not as concentrated. Again, we can further define mixtures into homogeneous, which are uniform throughout the mixture, and it's broken up into solutions, and light will easily pass through it. So we can use the Tyndall effect, or the lack of the Tyndall effect, and relate it as a solution. Heterogeneous mixtures have varying properties. There's 2 types. We have colloids, which are like the mayonnaise in water. These really, really small particles. They don't settle out, but they still continue to be in solution. And they're kind of hard to distinguish between solutions and colloids. That's why we use the Tyndall effect. So the Tyndall effect will scatter the light and the light won't be able to pass through, whereas in solutions it'll be easily able to pass through. Suspensions are kind of like oil and water. You can definitely see the layering effects, and you can visualize these particles because they'll settle out. If they're small enough, they sometimes will block the light, but sometimes they won't, depending on where you're shining the light. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of the types of matter and the types of solutions we're going to be talking about in this unit.